Promise, 75.
Today we're going to be talking about hope and optimism. The title of the sermon is "It's Going to Be Okay," and it is. So there's your preview. But let's start by standing and inviting the Lord into this space for song.
Our first song is number 20. 20.
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Let us pray. O Lord God, Jesus Christ, our Creator and our Savior, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the hidden ways that you guide us through each of our days. We thank you for all the things that you lay in the paths before us that will help us on our journey, that will make us better people, that will help us help the people around us. Here now, we pray that you talk. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so on earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and power, and glory forever. Amen. O Lord, forgive us our trespasses. As we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen. So if y'all turn with me in your first brochure, the back page, so the presentation, we'll say together verse 7 of Psalm 39. And now, O Lord, for what do I wait? My hope is in you. Let's see. So I need a young, somewhat brave volunteer who can follow the directions. First hand, come on up. So I'm just stand right over here. So people can hear you. So, first question. Would you consider yourself an optimist or a pessimist?
No, I am.
Okay. Good. Should we ask them to define optimism and pessimism?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, who here can define optimism? Anybody? In the back.
Looking to the bright side.
Looking to the bright side, right? And pessimism is the opposite, which is expecting bad things to happen, right? So, for instance, if this were full about here, how would you describe it? Would it be half full or half empty? Okay, so it could be either, right? So, an optimist sees, oh, there's still half the glass left. A pessimist will say, oh no, half of it's empty already, right? Okay, so, hold out your hand. So I have a task for you. Your job is to take that coin and to put it in this cup. Now, how optimistic are you in your ability to do that? Not at all? You don't think there's any way you're going to put that coin in that cup?
Oh, no, like that.
Oh, you definitely can. Okay, so you're an optimist about being able to put that in there. Okay, what if, you have to start over here and then walk to that cup with your arm outstretched and put the coin in the cup down this. You feel optimistic about that? Can you do that?
I can do that.
You can do that? Okay. Can you breathe?
I can do it.
Still see through it?
Well, I can do it.
Oh. So you're still feeling optimistic, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Who here is optimistic about his ability? Walk over there and put the coin in the cup. Raise your hand. You guys are so foolish. Okay, I'm going to make it easier. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way so you don't hurt yourself. Okay? So Benjamin, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to describe to you roughly how far you have to go. So we're going to call it 6 steps. Okay? So 6 steps, and I want you to take those 6 steps to stop, and I'm going to walk with you just so you don't trip over yourself. All right? So go ahead. Okay, stop. Now, what I want you to do is hold your hands straight out. Do you think you're over the cup? Okay, move your hand a little bit. Now are you over the cup? Hey, you found it. How did you find it? How did you know that that was where to put your hand?
Told me to move it over there.
I told you to move your hand, I didn't tell you which way to move it. But you did it. So congratulations. Okay, so this is a silly illustration of something very real. Why am I even talking about optimism? 2 reasons. One, I believe that our world today is seriously lacking some really important things. If you look out into the world, look at what people are dealing with, there's a ton of anxiety, there's a ton of depression, there's a ton of fear, and it's because there is, among other things, a lack of hope, lack of a sense of purpose, a lack of a sense of connection. I think these are all incredibly powerful needs that the world is desperate to have fulfilled, that I think church communities just like ours are poised to be part of the solution for. So I want to talk about the hope part today. So that's one of the reasons is I think there's a huge need for hope. Second of all, if you read God's Word, it is full of messages that tell us to be hopeful, and in fact to be optimistic, to not only look for the good, but to expect it. Now, that can actually be sort of a challenging message, because in life, sometimes things get really bad. And it can be really hard to be optimistic. And it can be hard to be told, well, God wants you to look on the bright side when your life is not going well. Well, it's not that God says look on the bright side, but rather, he says over and over again in his word, there's more good than you see. And this is a reason to be optimistic. Alright? So, who here knows who Helen Keller is? Heard? Okay. For those of you who have not, Helen Keller was blind, couldn't see very early in her life, and unlike Benjamin here in this demonstration, she was also deaf. So if she were trying to put the coin in the cup, she wouldn't have been able to hear my instructions. She wouldn't have even been able to hear me say that's what the goal is. She could only communicate with the world through her remaining senses: touch, taste, and smell. And most of her communication with other human beings was through touch. But for the first several years of her life, nobody could figure out how to communicate anything other than the very basic, no, don't be here, be here, with her through touch. And so, the early part of her life, she was isolated. She was alone. It was a hard way to grow up. And even once she started to communicate with people through touch, through sign language felt in her palm, for instance, it's still not a life most of us would choose. But would it surprise you to hear that Helen Keller was very much an optimist? And in fact, she wrote an essay about optimism, really worth reading. I strongly recommend it. Just going to give you one short quote. She wrote, "No pessimist ever discovered the secret of the stars, or sailed to an uncharted land, or opened a new heaven to the human spirit. Helen Keller was not an optimist by nature. She was an optimist by choice. She decided to look to the good. Nature gave her a lot of evidence to expect things to be bad. She was dealt a very bad hand. But she chose to see good and chose to expect good. And she's actually one of the more famous followers of the branch of Christianity that we all talk about here every Sunday. And she saw in the books of theology of the new church a source of a lot of this hope. So let me read to you from one of those books. This is a book called Divine Providence. And it talks a little bit about what we should expect from the Lord in the way He runs things. So, here's what it says. The operation of divine providence, in other words, the way God guides our lives, the operation of divine providence to save a person begins at the person's birth and continues to the end of their life and afterward to eternity. Heaven, from the human race, is the fundamental goal in the end of creation of the universe. This end or goal in its operation and progress is divine providence working to save humankind. This is what God's all about. And everything He does is bent in that direction. It goes on, it says, simply consider a fruit tree. Right? So imagine a tree. It is first born from a tiny seed as a tender sprout. Is it not? And gradually grows after that into a sapling that spreads its branches. And these become covered with leaves until it puts forth flowers and bears fruit, and in them places a new seed by which it provides for its perpetuation. Right? So we've got this marvelous process that is why we have trees all around us. And yes, do not each and all of the constituents or parts in them proceed from the first goal to the last goal constantly and marvelously according to the laws of their order? Why not the main goal of the universe likewise, which is to heaven from the human race? Can there be anything in its progress which does not proceed constantly according to the laws of divine providence? In other words, if you think about how a tree works, everything that a tree does is geared towards creating more trees. Every cell of that tree is either making seeds, making things that spread seeds, making things that will support seeds, or making things that support that whole system. Every tiny bit of a tree is headed towards that goal. Well, if there's a God, wouldn't you think every tiny bit of his creation is headed towards his goal? And his goal is you in heaven. Everything he does is bent in that direction. Goes on. It says, since a person's life has correspondence with the growth of a tree, let us draw a parallel or comparison. A person's early childhood is comparatively like the tender sprout of a tree shooting up from its seed out of the earth. A person's later childhood and teenage years are like the same sprout growing into a sapling and its little branches. The natural truths with which every person is first equipped are like the leaves which cover the sapling's branches. So those are like the first things that you learn. Leaves have the smallest meaning in the word. A person's initial introductions into the marrying of goodness with truth, or the spiritual marriage, are like the flowers which the tree produces in the spring. So this is when we first really start to learn how to take things we've learned and connect them with what does good for other people. It's like those flowers. The first stages of the spiritual marriage are like the beginnings of the fruit. Spiritual goods, the good things of charity, are like the fruits themselves, and are also symbolized by fruit in the Word. And the propagations of wisdom from love, in other words, all the different ways the good that we do helps bring wisdom into the world, are like the seed, which result in a person becoming like a garden or a paradise. A person is also described by a tree in the Word. Like there are lots of references in the Bible to different trees. And a person's wisdom from love is described as a garden. Nothing else is symbolically meant by the Garden of Eden. A person is indeed owing to a seed a bad tree. Okay, so here's the bad part of the message. We all start pretty flawed. So if you were going to take an arborist view of the human race, you'd see a lot of trees with a lot of problems. There are diseased trees that aren't growing right, and it's not just some of us, it's all of us. We all have these issues and imperfections. But it goes on, because there's hope for us bad trees. It's still possible to engraft or insert shoots taken from the tree of life, which turn the sap drawn from our old root into sap that produces good fruit. We draw this comparison to make it known that since the progress of divine providence is so constant in growth and rebirth of trees, it must be utterly constant in the reformation and rebirth or regeneration of people who are much more valued than trees, in keeping with the words of the Lord. And let me just read to you a little bit farther down, later paragraph, number 333 says, we say that the operation, I know I'm reading a lot to you today, but this is good stuff. We say that the operation of divine providence to save a person begins at your birth and continues to the end of your life. To understand this, you must know that the Lord sees what your character is and foresees what you will it to be. That's what it will be. So not just what kind of person are you, but what kind of person are you trying to be. God sees this. Moreover, for God to be human, moreover, for you to be human, and thus immortal, your will's freedom cannot be taken away. Therefore, God foresees a person's state after death and provides for it from your birth, even to the end of your life. In the case of people who choose evil, God provides by permitting and continually steering away from worse evils. But in the case of people who choose good, he provides by leading to good. And the divine providence operates unceasingly to save a person. So, everything in the universe is meant towards this. That's a lot of stuff I'm going to be up here with them. Let me give you a story which illustrates how God works. In the Old Testament, there's a period of time when the kingdom of Israel is under attack. It's a war of invasion from the kingdom of Aram, which is in modern-day Syria. And the Aramean army is significantly better equipped, better trained, and more powerful than the Israelite army. But for a long time, the Israelite army manages to always find the right place to give battle and to always avoid traps, and does really well because God is secretly helping them. Here's another story. This is from the second book of Kings, chapter 6. Verse 8 starts like this. Now the king of Aram was at war with Israel, and after conferring with officers, he said, I will set up my camp in such and such a place. So the king would make plans. Then the man of God, his name was Elisha, by the way, sent word to the king of Israel, saying, beware of passing that place, because the Arameans are going down there. And so the king of Israel checked on the place indicated by the man of God. And time and again, Elisha warned the king, so that he was on his guard in such places. So God is secretly helping the kingdom of Israel protect themselves from these invaders. More. This enraged the king of Aram, and he summoned his officers and demanded of them, will you not tell me which of us is on the side of the king of Israel? In other words, how do they know where we're going to be before we're there? One of you guys must be a spy. Here's the answer. None of us, my lord, the king, said one of his officers, but Elisha, the prophet who's in Israel, he tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. And by the way, this makes it sound like the king of Aram has really good spies, and he knows what's going on in conversations with the king. And his spies are telling him, Elisha, the prophet, he's giving away everything. He somehow knows everything you say. So what do you think the king of Aram is going to do? Go, find out where he is, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. And the report came back, he is in the town of Dothan. So then the king sent horses and chariots and a strong force there, and they went by night and surrounded the city. Now, when the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. So imagine this. You work for this man of God. You get up early in the morning, you're up before he is, it seems, and the first thing you discover when you go out of your house is there is an army surrounding your city. You're trapped. So he goes back to Elisha. He says, oh my Lord, what shall we do? The servant asks. Elisha says, don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Now the servant's probably thinking, that's crazy. We're in this little town, and there's this big army around us, and even if the numbers are equal, these are armed horsemen, right? They've got mounts, they can charge in anytime they want, they've got weapons, and we're just this little town. And there are more of them than us. How can you say the people who are on our side outnumber the people who are against us? Then Elisha prayed, O Lord, open his eyes so that he may see. And then the Lord opened the servant's eyes. And he looked and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. With his natural eyes, the servant saw all these horsemen, all these enemy soldiers. But when the eyes that we all will eventually see with, when we die and pass on into heaven, when those eyes were opened to him, he saw a much bigger army surrounding the smaller army. And not only did they have horses and chariots, but their chariots, it says chariots of fire. So they were, it's hard to say what it was, they were flaming, they were glowing, there was something amazing about these chariots. And it's not that Elisha prayed to God and said, we're in trouble, please send help. Rather, he prayed, open his eyes. What the servant saw was always there from the start. The Lord was already protecting Elisha before the servant even knew what was going on. And that is very much true about your life. God has been present in your life from your very first breath. He has been working with you and for you. Now, his perspective is not your perspective. He looks very long-term and very big picture. But when you feel like you are alone, when you feel like you are hopeless, when you feel like, I can't do it, I want you to know you're not alone. You are surrounded by God's army. You are with the Lord right now. And in fact, the times when he feels most distant, if you read through the Word, you'll see he's actually most close to us in those moments when we feel completely cut off, when we feel not only in doubt of his existence, but certainly he can't be there. That's when he draws closest to us, because that's when we need his protection most. He says hidden armies to defeat our visible spiritual enemies. Now, here's the thing. You're a spiritual being. You're secretly surrounded by the Lord's angels. You can't see them now. You'll see them someday. But as long as we live in this world, we can't see into that world. Our eyes don't normally get opened the way the serpent's eyes are open. But they're there. What we do see with our natural eyes. So what did the serpent see when he looked up? He saw horsemen. Well, if you look through the Word and sort of study it out, one of the things you'll discover is that horses, over and over again, symbolically are connected with our intellect and how we reason about stuff. And in particular, our ability, which is a really powerful ability, to reason about the natural world and natural stuff. And the servant, he saw all these horsemen. When we look at our own lives, we are very good at spotting all of the barriers and problems. Here's why I'm never going to meet somebody who won't love them and marry them. Here's why I'm not going to pass that test. Here is why no one will ever be friends with me. Here is why the thing which I care most about for my community can just never happen. Here are all the reasons. We're really good at lining them up. We're really good at spotting all those horsemen around us. We're not so good at seeing the chariots of fire that are surrounding them. And there's a reason. The Lord needs us, and this was hinted at in one of the readings we did today. The Lord needs us to fully believe that we're in charge of our lives. He wants us to make decisions for ourselves. But he also knows that we're not divine, we're not super powerful, we can't do everything by ourselves. So he tries to secretly help us around the decisions we make, but he gives us the illusion that it's all about us, and that we're in control. It's a little bit like if you've ever worked with a very small child who wants to be helpful with something. Like if you have a 4-year-old who wants to bake cookies. Well, if you just say, well, there's the fridge and there's the oven, that's not going to turn out well. But if you go and you just do all the work for the 4-year-old and just sit them out on chairs and you watch, I'll bake the cookies, they're not going to be happy. So, you compromise. You tell them what they need to do, and then you sort of work with them. And maybe you carry the eggs to the counter, maybe you crack the eggs, but then you let them stir it. And you do as much as you can to give them agency in the baking. But you fill in all of the gaps so that it actually happens and turns out well. This is how God works with us. He gives us the illusion of complete control over our lives. And then he's constantly there with us, right behind us, filling in the gaps, making certain that when we reach out, things go where they're supposed to go. But again, he's thinking spiritually and long term. So it's really easy to say, well, if God's helping me in everything, how come I failed that test last week? Well, that test might not have been the most important thing in your life. There may have been something bigger going on. And letting you fail that test may even help you. But if it comes to the really important things in life. Things related to love, things related to doing right and not doing wrong, things that connect with your eternal well-being. He never drops the ball there. He's always guiding you. So, having said all of this, what do we do with it? Because, I mean, you can sit here and, you know what? Okay, that makes sense. Or maybe say, you know, I'm looking at my life and I'm still not seeing it. This is just information. Here's what you can do with it. So first of all, if you're created to be an angel, just the way a seed was created to be a tree, seeds don't make themselves into trees. You're not going to make yourself into an angel. That's something that God's doing for you and with you. But what he does do is he inspires you. Have you ever wondered why you're drawn to things you're drawn to? Spend a lot of time really asking yourself, well, why do I spend time with that person? Why do I like this activity? Why is this how I've spent my life? And the deeper you look at it, the more mysterious it gets. Like, it's really easy to come up with surface explanations for why you do the things you do, why you like things you like. But if you keep asking whys behind those explanations, it gets really murky. And the reason is, the primary mover in your life is a world that you can't see. The spiritual world is constantly flowing into our minds. And we have influences from hell, and we have influences from God through heaven. And these inspire us and motivate us in one direction or another. And a big part of how God grows you into a tree, turns you into the angel he's planned for you to become, is by implanting in you interests and desires for good. So, when you have a dream of something really beautiful, really good for your life, maybe for the life of somebody else that you love, maybe for your community or for your church, when you say, you know what, I see how things could be better, that's coming from God. Follow that. And then, when your natural eyes start to point out, oh, look, I'm surrounded by horsemen. There are all these different reasons that can't happen. Go back to the idea that you wouldn't be able to see the potential for good if God wasn't there working with you. And he's not going to give you the inclination to do good and to bring good into the world if he's not also willing to help you do it. Now, those horsemen are still there. You still have to deal with them. It's going to be hard work sometimes, following through on your vision for what's good in your life, and the life of the people you love, and the life of your community. It doesn't just suddenly happen because you believe. And there are going to be trials along the way. There are going to be challenges. But there's way more to the picture than what you can see. And if you can just practice trusting that your inclination towards good, that whenever you encounter that in your own heart, that is an illustration of God's intentions in your life. And then from there, decide, I'm going to trust that God's doing good. And I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to still use my own natural ability to think through problems, to see what I can do to get rid of as many of these problems as possible, to steer around them. But I'm not going to let their existence shut me down. I'm going to hope. I'm going to believe that as I take steps forward, new opportunities will arise, and God will slowly reveal himself to me. Because, by the way, that's how big things happen. People who accomplish great things, they don't see all of the steps and then take all of the steps as they saw them. Great things happen when somebody said, way off there is where we need to go. And here are a couple places we need to get to along the way. And this is the first step we have to take. And once we take that first step, we'll have a better view, be able to decide what the next step is, and the next step. Really big things happen, work out along the way. Because we can't foresee everything. Live your life like this. Trust that if you follow God down the path a little bit, He'll provide. New opportunities will show up. It's scary to go forward not knowing what all the steps are going to be. It's scary knowing that your life is, in fact, surrounded sometimes by this army of horsemen. But it is worth taking the risk. Because when you trust in the Lord and you decide to have hope, amazing things happen in your life. And in fact, you do amazing things for other people. Because God thinks big. The Lord is the God of impossible things. His plan for you isn't, that you get through, that you get by. His plan for you is that you get to heaven. And that along the way you bring happiness and peace and love and wisdom into other people's lives. Likewise, He creates His church with the intention of doing good things. Not just being, but doing. Keep trying, and God will multiply the force of your actions. When you take a small step, He can then use that small step to accomplish countless things that you didn't see coming. And each step that you take, He's going to turn into all sorts of other steps, impacts. There's a ripple effect to everything that you do. Just don't give up hope. Final thing you can do with this idea. If you find yourself in the position of the man who said to the Lord, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. If everything that I'm saying sounds good to you, but in your gut it just doesn't feel true, but you want it to be true, look around you. There are many people in this room who are there, who have hope, and can see it. If you're struggling to find hope, reach out to anyone else in this room. And you will either find someone who's struggling just like you, which, by the way, is a very useful thing to find when you're struggling. Or you will find somebody who can help you, somebody who has hope, who can hold you up until you can have it too. Just risk taking that next step. The Lord is with you, and He has been all your life. Step forward and see what the Lord does. Amen. I'd like to invite you all to a moment of prayer. Bow your heads and join me. Lord, life gets dark and scary and confusing sometimes. I'm asking that you help everyone in this room to see some tiny measure of how you've helped them in their lives in the past, so that we can become more sure that you're always there. And I ask that you help motivate those in this room who are already hopeful and believing in you to be baskets of hope and belief for those in the room who need it. Now, Lord, hear in silent prayers for our hearts. In your name, Lord, we pray. Amen.
If you'll rise, we're going to sing number 15 together, Be Not Afraid. And just a note, after every verse, we sing the antiphon.
Lord, freely you have given, and freely we have received. Accept now this frugal offering from the heart for the building of your church. Now may the grace of our Lord God Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen.
Our final psalm is number 50. God is love, let heaven adore him. 50. Our poster today is the Song of the Month, number 66. Please follow along so you get an idea of how it goes.
Oh,
Studying the science. Process of the set.
So, Mac, I really appreciate your focus on the natural forces that were surrounding the city, the ones that were physically present. Very nice connection for me in my own life. And you may have made the connection, but I wonder, can you comment on the fact that the horses and chariots that were in the spiritual realm were of fire? And for myself, I'm curious about that from the Lord's perspective and also from our perspective. And as I say, you had my mind going in all different directions. You may have already spoken to that, but just curious about that.
Yeah, no, I did not get into that, and so now I'm going to do what the profession referred to as winging it. Since I didn't have researched that for this particular talk, but just sort of my assumption is that it's specifically chariots of fire that we're seeing. So chariots and horsemen both generally have to do with our intellect, whether our lower rational or our upper rational. But the fact that they're described as chariots of fire says to me that there's some connection here with not just truths of the intellect, but also love and good that resides in the will. And so I see, when you see chariots of fire, my mind immediately goes to this idea, this marriage of good and truth, which is all sort of essential to everything that God's doing. I don't know where to take it from the next step, but I think that's why it's specifically fire. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, there are two things that come to my mind as I listen to you. One would be just the fire of love that is in the Lord for everything that He's doing,
Right.
in the protection that you were talking about. And the other would be just the beginning point of any hope is the love that He puts in our own hearts. What is, if I'm surrounded by these horses and I've got all the good reasons why this can't work out that are playing on my mind, am I able to be in touch with the things that I care about more deeply from the Lord and the desires that He's placing in my heart that He hopes I will act on? Are those things that are flaming in there that really are the impetus for them going forward. Those are the two thoughts that came
that
forward.
really resonates with my own personal experience. When I think of like a particular time in my life that was very lacking in hope, like it was a real moment of despair in my life. Part of what pulled me back out was recognizing, first of all, I couldn't be hurting this much if I didn't care, and if there were things that felt worthy of loving. And even though intellectually I couldn't see any ideas that would get me out of where I was, as a matter of heart, the very fact that love was present gave me hope, even though I couldn't explain it. So that perfectly matched with what you just described.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, on the natural level, we get our news about the world from more and more and more places than ever before. But I think a common theme, if you had asked somebody 50 years ago, is the newspaper that you read, because that's what everyone did 50 years ago. Is it more negative or is it more positive? And I think people would say, yeah, it's largely negative. You got to go to page 10 to find an uplifting article. And it's the same way now, except it's on your phone, on your computer, on your TV, on your radio. It's everywhere. And for whatever reason, ratings is the excuse. But, the glass half full apparently sells.
If it bleeds, it bleeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of good in media and technology, including the printing press and newspapers, all the way up to the internet and social media. But we don't seem to be naturally wired to filter it properly. And there are a lot of incentives in systems like that to show us the worst. And I think that's one of the reasons that things like anxiety and depression and addiction are on the rise, like dramatically on the rise over the last 10, 15 years, is we're not properly coping with the fact that we are now just swimming in all of this information, much of it negative. Yeah, that's an important point. And it's not like that's going away, so we need to learn how to deal with it. Thank you. Anybody else? I know that was a real hopeful conclusion, right? I really am optimistic. We have overhand break.
Well, okay, this is totally silly. This has nothing to do with it. Because technically the class is entirely full. It's just half water and half oxygen.
Nuts. It's always full. You just don't see what it's full of.
Yes.
I like that. That's beautiful. Okay, just a few quick announcements. Very quick and hopefully optimistic. First of all, who here has cleaned up all their Christmas decorations? Wow, you guys are good. We got about half of ours put away. Well, mostly. We still have lights outside, but I don't know if you noticed, but we here are not decorated yet. So, thank you everyone that helped deck the halls before Christmas. Next Sunday, we need your help to de-deck the halls. And that's happening right after the 9:30 service. Is that correct? Yeah. So, if you want to help with that, that would be much appreciated. The Spiritual Studies Club is resuming after a holiday hiatus. And there's going to be a gathering. It's basically dinner and conversation, and it's nominally religious conversation, but you can talk about whatever you want. People get together and enjoy themselves. It's going to be this Friday, 7 p.m., and it's free. You don't have to pay for the food or anything. There are a couple of other things that are coming up, but you can read for yourself. So I just sort of one final, I think, immensely hopeful, optimistic announcement, but maybe it'll get me fired. Fly Eagles fly. All right, so have a great Sunday, everybody, and see you next week.